The flight of respect. The first rays of dawn filtered through the airport glass as Elijah and Olivia Carter wheeled their small silver suitcases across the polished floor of Terminal 3. At 15, they were twins not only in age but in spirit, inseparable shadows of each other. Elijah, tall for his age with sharp brown eyes, carried himself with a quiet confidence that reminded people of his father. Olivia, thoughtful and expressive, had her mother's calm poise and a notebook always tucked under her arm. This was no ordinary journey. For the first time in their young lives, the Carter twins were flying without any adult by their side. Their father, Michael Carter, CEO of Global Tech and one of the most respected business leaders in the country, had surprised them with VIP seats on Skyline Airways' newest Boeing 787 Dreamliner. "It's time you both take a step into independence," he had told them warmly the night before. "You'll learn more about dignity and responsibility when you're trusted to carry yourselves." The siblings had beamed with pride. For years they had watched their father travel the world, speaking at conferences, sealing billion-dollar partnerships, and championing causes for equality and justice. Now, even without him physically there, they felt as if his presence guided them. Elijah had promised himself silently that nothing would make them appear careless or immature on this trip. Olivia, more sensitive, had whispered to herself, "This is our chance to prove we belong anywhere." The first-class lounge smelled faintly of roasted coffee and polished leather. As they entered, attendants greeted them by name. "Mr. and Miss Carter, welcome," one said with a slight bow. Elijah and Olivia exchanged surprised smiles. It felt surreal being addressed so formally. Settling into their spacious waiting chairs, they whispered about how different this world was from economy-class trips they had taken before with their parents. "I think Dad wants us to see what respect looks like," Olivia murmured. Elijah nodded, sipping juice, trying to look older than his years. They didn't know that soon, respect itself would be tested in ways neither expected. When boarding was called, the twins walked down the jet bridge, their tickets held tightly like badges of honor. Seats 1A and 1B waited for them in the very front, sleek leather recliners that sparkled under cabin lights. Elijah sank into his with a grin, adjusting the seat controls, while Olivia placed her book in the side pocket and looked out at the sunrise spilling across the tarmac. "Do you think we'll be okay on our own?" she asked softly. "We're Carter kids," Elijah said confidently. "We'll be fine. Dad trusts us." Moments later, a flight attendant in a Navy uniform approached. Her smile was professional yet kind. "Mr. and Miss Carter, would you like refreshments before takeoff?" The way she addressed them again filled their hearts with quiet pride. "Orange juice, please," Elijah replied politely, remembering his father's emphasis on manners. Olivia added with a shy smile, "Thank you." The cabin was serene, passengers settling in, the low hum of air conditioning filling the silence. Yet that calm would not last. Confident footsteps echoed from behind. A tall, middle-aged white woman in an elegant beige coat appeared, her heels striking the aisle like a drumbeat of authority. Her name was Karen Mitchell, a platinum elite member of Skyline Airways, infamous among staff for her demanding temperament. Her sharp green eyes swept across the first-class cabin until they landed on the two coveted front seats, her usual seats. Her lips tightened, her brows furrowed. She had taken those exact seats for years, and in her mind, no one, not even teenagers, had the right to occupy them. Without hesitation, she strode toward Elijah and Olivia, her presence changing the entire atmosphere. Olivia leaned closer to her brother, whispering, "She's looking at us." Elijah stayed calm but alert, his hand resting lightly on his armrest. Karen stopped before them, crossing her arms. Her voice rang out sharply, carrying down the aisle. "Excuse me, there's clearly been a mistake. These seats, 1A and 1B, are mine. I've sat here on every flight for the last decade." Heads turned. Other passengers glanced over, curiosity sparking in their eyes. The twins froze under the weight of her stare. Before Elijah could respond, a nearby flight attendant stepped forward quickly. "Miss Mitchell, I'm so sorry, but these seats are indeed booked for Elijah and Olivia Carter. The reservations were confirmed yesterday by their father." "Carter?" Karen interrupted, waving her hand dismissively. That name means nothing to me. Do you know who I am? Platinum Elite. These are my seats. These children must move. Put them in the back. Olivia's stomach tightened. She had expected respect, not humiliation. Elijah inhaled slowly, remembering his father's lessons. Never let anger take the first step. Respond with dignity first. Ma'am, Elijah said calmly, his voice steady despite the flush in his cheeks. We booked these seats. They belong to us. Karen's laugh was cold, sharp. Belong to you? Children don't belong in the front row of first class. You don't deserve these seats. Move, now. The cabin hushed. Every eye was on the confrontation. Olivia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes but blinked them back. Elijah reached for her hand under the armrest, squeezing it reassuringly. Please check again, the attendant tried, voice tight with strain. The system confirms. Karen leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming. Listen carefully. I will not fly anywhere other than these seats. If you don't move them, I'll have the captain informed. Let's see how quickly these little brats change their tune then. The word brats cut through Olivia like a knife. Her chest ached, but she sat upright, refusing to let this stranger see her cry. Elijah clenched his jaw, fighting back words he wanted to spit. And that was when Olivia whispered, barely audible but strong enough. Elijah, call Dad. Elijah's eyes flickered. Their father had told them only to call if something important happened. This felt more than important. It felt like a test of everything he had taught them about dignity and respect. He pulled out his phone slowly, every movement watched by the silent cabin. Karen smirked as if amused, not realizing what was about to unfold. Dad? Elijah's voice trembled at first, then grew steadier. There's a situation. A woman says we don't belong in our seats. She wants us moved to the back. A pause. The quiet strength of Michael Carter's voice filled Elijah's ear, though he put it on speaker so Olivia could hear too. Stay calm, son. Do not move. I'll take care of it. Karen rolled her eyes. Oh, please. Calling your daddy won't save you. Rules are rules. But for the first time, Elijah smiled faintly. Because when Michael Carter said he would take care of something, the world usually shifted. And in that charged silence, as Karen folded her arms with arrogant certainty, no one in that cabin realized that within the next 10 minutes, everything, from crew behavior to cabin atmosphere, was about to change. Justice, like the plane itself, was preparing for takeoff. The call that changed everything. The engines rumbled faintly beneath the cabin floor as passengers settled in, unaware that the quiet hum of takeoff would soon be drowned by a storm of voices and judgment. Elijah lowered his phone, his father's voice still echoing in his mind, steady, calm, commanding. Do not move. I'll take care of it. Olivia's fingers tightened around his hand. What will he do? She whispered. Elijah's jaw set with quiet confidence. Everything. Across from them, Karen Mitchell raised her chin, her smirk widening. Children these days, she muttered loudly, ensuring the nearby passengers heard. So entitled, thinking their parents can buy their way into respect. Pathetic. Olivia flinched at the word, but Elijah stayed firm. The flight attendant looked torn, caught between loyalty to the airline and the icy glare of one of its so-called platinum elites. Miss Mitchell, the attendant said again, voice wavering, please, the system shows clearly. Enough, Karen snapped. Her voice cracked through the cabin like a whip. Either fix this or I'll report you to the airline board myself. A man a few rows behind leaned to his companion and whispered, why is she attacking kids? Another muttered, they're sitting where they belong. Murmurs grew, the uneasy ripple of disapproval spreading like a wave through first class. At that exact moment, Elijah's phone buzzed again. Michael Carter. He pressed speaker so Olivia could hear. Elijah, Olivia, listen carefully, their father's deep voice commanded. Even through the tiny speaker, his words carried authority. Do not speak further to this woman. The airline's CEO will call the captain in 2 minutes. Stay seated. Watch what happens. The twins exchanged wide-eyed glances. The airline CEO? Their father wasn't wasting a second. Karen gave a dry laugh. Pretending to call CEOs now? Cute. Her eyes sparkled with disdain. When you grow up, you'll learn that life isn't about games. I've spent years earning these seats. Privilege isn't for children who barely know how to tie their shoes. Olivia's throat ached, but she held her chin higher. For the first time, she saw how ugly arrogance looked up close. 2 minutes later, the cabin intercom chimed. The captain's voice came on, unusually serious. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the short delay before takeoff. We are resolving a matter with the seating. Thank you for your patience. Karen's smirk faltered. Her sharp eyes darted to the attendants, then to the cockpit door. Something was happening, something she hadn't expected. Moments later, the head flight attendant approached, posture stiff, phone in hand. Her face had drained of color. She bent close to Karen and whispered, though the cabin still caught fragments. Yes, the CEO himself. No, immediate action. The Carters. Yes, his children. Karen's expression froze. Slowly, disbelief hardened into pale realization. His children? She hissed. The attendant nodded tightly, her professional smile barely hiding her panic. Yes, Elijah and Olivia Carter. Their father, Michael Carter, CEO of Global Tech. The airline CEO has given instructions personally. These seats are theirs, by right of booking, and you are to step aside immediately. The silence that followed was electric. Passengers leaned closer, eyes wide, whispers filling the air like sparks of fire. The Carters? Someone muttered. As in the Michael Carter? Another whispered. That's his kids? Karen's cheeks flushed crimson. She looked at the twins as if seeing them for the first time, not as children, but as names that carried weight beyond her arrogance. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she was speechless. Elijah spoke gently, breaking the silence. We told you these were our seats. His voice was calm, but Olivia could feel the strength beneath it. She felt tears rise again, not from humiliation this time, but from pride. Karen tried to recover, forcing a brittle laugh. Well, perhaps a small misunderstanding. Surely no need to involve. Before she could finish, the captain himself emerged from the cockpit, a rarity that turned every head. His expression was grave, his voice precise. Miss Mitchell, he said firmly, on direct orders from Skyline Airways CEO, you are to return to your assigned seat immediately. Furthermore, due to repeated misconduct toward our passenger, ours and crew, your platinum status has been revoked effective immediately. You will be escorted upon landing. The words hit like thunder. Gasps filled the cabin. Olivia's mouth fell open. Elijah blinked, stunned. Karen's knees seemed to weaken, her arrogance cracking into visible shock. You can't, she stammered. I've been loyal for 15 years. I know the board personally. The captain's tone was steel. Loyalty is measured by respect. You showed none. Actions have consequences, Miss Mitchell. Please sit down before we call security to remove you. Karen's lips trembled. Her hands clenched around the straps of her designer purse. For a long moment, pride fought with fear, but fear won. Shoulders slumping, she turned and walked stiffly down the aisle, her heels clicking with hollow defiance. The cabin erupted, not with noise but with a wave of silent respect. Eyes turned toward Elijah and Olivia, not with pity, but admiration. Some nodded. A man mouthed, "Good for you." A woman touched her heart and smiled at Olivia. The twins sat taller. Elijah squeezed his sister's hand. Olivia whispered, barely audible, "Dad was right. Dignity isn't for sale." Minutes later, as the plane finally lifted into the golden morning sky, both siblings stared out the window, clouds drifting like mountains of light. They felt different now, not just passengers, but witnesses to something their father had always promised them. When injustice rises, justice follows close behind. And though Karen sat trembling in silence somewhere behind them, stripped of her imagined power, Elijah and Olivia felt only peace. For in that moment, 30,000 feet above the ground, they had learned the truth of their father's words. Respect is not demanded, it is earned. Accountability at 30,000 feet. The seatbelt sign blinked on as the Dreamliner leveled out above the clouds. The golden horizon stretched endlessly, yet inside the cabin, a quiet tension lingered. Passengers whispered among themselves, stealing glances toward the twins who sat tall in seats, 1A and 1B. Elijah and Olivia looked calm on the outside, but inside their hearts still raced, the echo of humiliation battling with the pride of justice served. Behind them, Karen Mitchell sat stiff in her reassigned seat, her arms crossed, her face pale with silent fury. The fall from arrogance to disgrace had been swift, and she knew every pair of eyes on that plane had witnessed it. But the story wasn't finished. A soft chime broke the silence. Elijah's phone vibrated on the armrest table. Olivia leaned closer, both of them glancing at the screen. Their father again. Elijah pressed the speaker. "Children," Michael Carter's deep voice came through, calm but charged with authority. "Are you both safe?" "Yes, Dad," Elijah answered. "She's gone to her seat." Olivia added softly. "They even revoked her platinum membership." Michael's pause was heavy with thought. Then his voice hardened. "Good. But this isn't only about her. The crew allowed that humiliation to unfold. You are my children. But even if you weren't, no passenger, especially two teenagers, should face such arrogance unchecked. Stay where you are. The airline CEO and I are speaking now." Olivia's eyes widened. "The airline CEO?" "Yes," Michael replied firmly. "And by the time you land, changes will already be set in motion." The line went silent as he ended the call. Elijah and Olivia exchanged glances, their stomachs fluttering. At the front of the cabin, the head flight attendant returned, her hands folded neatly but her face etched with tension. She stopped by their seats, lowering her voice. "Mr. and Miss Carter, we deeply apologize. The captain has confirmed a formal report will be filed regarding this incident." Her words sounded rehearsed, empty. Elijah tilted his head. "Why didn't you stop her earlier?" His voice wasn't angry, but it carried weight. "You saw how she treated us. You let it go on." The attendant stiffened, caught. Passengers nearby leaned in, listening. Olivia added gently, "Respect isn't just for people with status. It's for everyone." The attendant's cheeks flushed crimson. She opened her mouth to respond, but another interruption came. The captain's voice, this time over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Skyline Airways, we regret the incident earlier. Please know immediate steps are being taken to ensure all passengers are treated with dignity. Our priority is your trust." Passengers clapped lightly, some nodding in agreement. Karen sank lower into her seat, her face burning. But in the cockpit, unseen, a private call was taking place. The airline CEO's voice crackled through the secure line, direct to the captain. "Captain Hughes, you will prepare a full incident report upon landing. All crew members who failed to intervene swiftly will be suspended pending investigation." This came directly from Michael Carter, and I stand with him. Do you understand? "Yes, sir," the captain answered quietly. Back in the cabin, Elijah leaned close to Olivia, whispering, "Did you hear that tone in Dad's voice earlier? He's not just defending us. He's making sure this never happens again." Olivia's heart swelled. For years she had admired her father not just for his power but for his fairness. And now, watching the crew shift nervously, realizing accountability was finally at their doorstep, she understood what true leadership meant, using power to protect, not to intimidate. An hour into the flight, two attendants returned, their steps hesitant. They approached Elijah and Olivia with trays of food, bowing slightly. "Mr. and Miss Carter, complimentary meals for you, and..." One of them hesitated before adding, "A personal apology. We should have spoken sooner." Olivia gave a small smile. "Thank you," she said simply. Elijah nodded, but both siblings knew this wasn't about free meals. It was about respect being restored. Behind them, a passenger whispered to another, "Imagine being the CEOs. Kids and treated like that. I'd be shaken if I were those crew members." "Shows you," another replied. "Never underestimate anyone. The plane cruised on, clouds drifting like silent witnesses. The humiliation had shifted into vindication, but Elijah and Olivia could feel the weight of responsibility. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were symbols of a lesson larger than themselves. Near the end of the meal service, the captain himself appeared again, walking into the cabin. Conversations hushed instantly. He stopped in front of the twins, his cap tucked under one arm, his eyes serious. "Mr. and Miss Carter," he said with a respectful nod. "On behalf of Skyline Airways, I apologize personally. What you faced was unacceptable. Please know this flight and this crew will be remembered for the wrong reasons, but because of your composure, it will also be remembered for a lesson." Olivia swallowed hard. "Thank you, Captain." Elijah added, his young voice carrying like an adult's, "We just wanted to be treated fairly." The captain's eyes softened. "And you will be, from now on." As he walked away, whispers spread again. A teenage boy across the aisle gave Elijah a small thumbs up. Olivia caught the eye of a woman who mouthed, "Proud of you." Karen sat frozen, lips pressed shut, stripped not only of her privilege, but of her audience. Hours later, as the Dreamliner began its descent, Elijah and Olivia looked out at the patchwork of city lights glowing beneath the clouds. Their father's promise had been fulfilled. Not only had dignity been defended, but accountability had followed swiftly. And though they were young, they knew this truth now carved into their hearts. Silence in the face of disrespect is complicity. But one voice, one call, and one act of courage can turn humiliation into justice, a landing of truth. The cabin lights brightened as the Dreamline began its slow descent. Seatbelts clicked into place, trays folded away, and the city lights sparkled below like 1,000 silent witnesses. Elijah and Olivia sat quietly in their front row seats, their reflections shimmering in the small oval windows. They were no longer the same two nervous teenagers who had boarded that plane hours earlier. Karen Mitchell sat further back, her once commanding presence now wilted into silence. She stared at her hands, her platinum membership revoked, her future as an elite traveler shattered. Around her, passengers who once bowed to her demands now looked away, uninterested. She was invisible, the very thing she had once accused others of being. As the wheels screeched softly against the runway, Elijah whispered to his sister, "We're almost there. I wonder what Dad will do next." Olivia's eyes gleamed with quiet certainty. "He'll be waiting." Moments later, the plane rolled to a smooth stop at the gate. The chime signaled the end of the journey, but for the Carters, the real story was only beginning. Passengers stood, stretching, pulling bags from overhead bins. But a hush fell across the first-class cabin when two uniformed airline executives stepped on board. Their polished shoes clicked against the floor, their expressions grave. Between them stood a tall man in a charcoal suit, his presence unmistakable. Michael Carter. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Some whispered his name, others simply stared. To see a CEO of his stature walking calmly down the aisle of a just-landed flight was something no one expected. Elijah and Olivia shot to their feet, their faces lighting up. "Dad!" Olivia exclaimed softly, though she quickly remembered herself standing straighter. Elijah grinned, relief washing over him. Michael placed a steady hand on each of their shoulders. "You did well," he said, his voice low but filled with pride. "I watched the reports come in while you were in the air. You showed restraint. You showed dignity. That's more powerful than anger." Behind them, Karen tried to shrink into her seat, but her attempts were futile. Michael's gaze turned toward her, calm yet piercing. He didn't raise his voice, but every passenger could hear him. "Miss Mitchell, your actions today will be documented and remembered. You did not simply insult two children, you insulted the very principle of fairness. Seats are not granted by arrogance or status. They are reserved by right." Karen opened her mouth, desperate to defend herself, but no words came. She knew there was nothing she could say that would undo the humiliation she had already sown. Michael turned to the executives. "And as for your crew," he continued, his tone sharper now, "they allowed this incident to unfold far too long. An airline is only as strong as the respect it shows its passengers. Today, you failed. The executives lowered their heads, shame etched on their faces. One spoke carefully. Mr. Carter, on behalf of Skyline Airways, we deeply apologize. Disciplinary actions will be taken. Several crew members will be suspended effective immediately. We will release a statement by tomorrow morning. Michael's eyes narrowed. Not for my children's sake. For every passenger who cannot make a phone call and be heard. Justice must not depend on last names or titles. The words hung heavy in the cabin, each syllable carving itself into the hearts of everyone listening. Elijah and Olivia stood taller, proud of their father's refusal to let this be just about them. Karen fidgeted with her purse, her voice breaking as she finally muttered, I didn't know. I thought. Michael raised a hand, silencing her. You thought wrong. And you showed the world what entitlement without compassion looks like. Passengers clapped softly, then louder, until the applause filled the cabin. Karen sank further, her face red, her arrogance dismantled entirely. Michael guided his child, ran toward the exit, but before stepping off the plane, he turned one last time. His voice was steady, commanding. Let this day serve as a reminder, he said, looking directly at the executives. Respect is not a privilege, it is a duty, and when it is denied, it will always find its way back, sometimes faster than you think. With that, he and his twins stepped into the jet bridge, leaving behind a cabin heavy with silence and reflection. Outside, cameras clicked. News had already spread. Reporters waited, microphones extended, eager to capture the fallout of a story that was racing across social media, even before the plane landed. Elijah and Olivia glanced nervously at the flashing lights, but Michael shielded them gently with his arm. Don't worry, he murmured. The world will see not just what happened, but how you handled it. That's the true story here. As they walked toward the terminal, Elijah felt a swell of pride unlike anything before. Olivia held her notebook tighter, knowing she would write about this day for years to come. And behind them, in the cabin they left, the echoes of their father's words still lingered. Respect is not for the powerful alone. It belongs to everyone. The storm of voices. The terminal was alive with noise, camera shutters clicking, reporters shouting questions, passengers craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the unfolding scene. Elijah and Olivia clung close to their father as the wave of flashing lights surrounded them. What had begun as a quiet flight had turned into a storm that now stretched beyond the walls of the airport. Mr. Carter, is it true your children were asked to give up their seats? One reporter yelled. Do you believe the airline discriminated against them? Another pressed, shoving a microphone forward. Michael paused, lifting a hand gently. The crowd hushed as though sensing the weight of his calm authority. His children stood on either side of him, their faces still carrying the mix of nerves and pride that came with surviving their first true test alone. Yes, Michael said finally, his voice even but resonant. My children, Elijah and Olivia, were asked to give up their rightful seats, not because of any error in booking, but because arrogance believed it carried more weight than dignity. A ripple of murmurs swept through the reporters. Cameras zoomed in closer. Michael continued, his eyes steady. This was not just about two teenagers on a flight. It was about a principle we all face every day, the temptation to judge others by their age, their color, their status, or their appearance. But let me remind you, respect is not negotiable. It is not reserved for those with titles or platinum memberships. It is for everyone. Olivia felt her chest swell with pride. Elijah stood taller, hearing in his father's words the echo of what he had felt in his heart during the confrontation. Reporters scribbled furiously. Social media was already ablaze. Hashtags spreading like fire. #respect for all. #Carter twins. #justice at 30K feet. Clips from passengers who had filmed the confrontation were being uploaded in real time, watched by thousands, then millions. One clip showed Karen's voice snapping, "Children don't belong in first class." Another captured Elijah's calm response, "These are our seats." And then the captain's decisive words about revoking her status. Each video was replayed, shared, and discussed. By the time Michael and his children reached the car waiting outside the airport, their phones buzzed relentlessly with messages. Friends, colleagues, strangers, everyone was reaching out, offering support, outrage, admiration. Inside the quiet of the car, Elijah finally exhaled. "Dad, everyone saw it?" Michael glanced at him, his expression softening. "Yes, but what they saw most was how you handled it. You didn't shout, you didn't fight, you stood firm. That is what they'll remember." Olivia leaned her head against the Wawiyus, Indau whispering, "It felt so unfair at first, like we were powerless." Michael nodded. "That's how injustice always feels at the start. But dignity doesn't shout. It stands. And when it stands, the world has no choice but to listen." The next morning, headlines dominated every major news outlet. Carter twins face discrimination in first class. Airline responds. CEO Michael Carter demands accountability after children humiliated on flight. Social media explodes over viral flight video. Talk shows replayed the clips, panelists debating what the incident revealed about entitlement, prejudice, and corporate responsibility. Parents across the country shared posts about teaching their children dignity. Teenagers admired the twins for their composure. The story had transcended one flight. It had become a conversation about society itself. Skyline Airways, under pressure, released a public statement by noon. "We sincerely apologize to Mr. Carter and his family and to all passengers affected by the incident on Flight 287. The behavior displayed by both crew and passenger fell below our standards. Immediate disciplinary action has been taken, and new training programs will be launched to ensure dignity and equality are upheld for every traveler." The statement was careful, corporate, but the world knew the truth. Change had only come because justice had been forced. That evening, Michael Carter stood at a podium in his company's headquarters, with Elijah and Olivia seated in the front row. Cameras broadcasted live. His voice carried not only as a CEO, but as a father. "I want to make something clear," he began. "This is not about my children being special. This is not about their last name. This is about every child, every mother, every father who has ever been told they don't belong in a place they rightfully earned. What happened at 30,000 feet is happening in classrooms, in workplaces, in neighborhoods every single day. We cannot remain silent." He paused, letting the silence settle before continuing. "Dignity does not ask for permission. Respect does not require a membership card. And justice, true justice, arrives when we decide to stop excusing arrogance and start defending what is right." The room erupted in applause. Olivia felt her throat tighten, eyes brimming with tears. Elijah's chest swelled with a pride he couldn't put into words. They weren't just watching their father speak as a CEO. They were watching him speak as their protector, their teacher, their example. Across the world, millions tuned in, some nodding through tears, others clapping in their living rooms. Strangers wrote online, "Finally someone said it out loud." Others shared their own stories of being told to move, of being made invisible, of having their dignity questioned. And in that moment, the Carter twins understood. Their story wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever been underestimated. Full circle of justice. Days turned into weeks, yet the story of Flight 287 refused to fade. What had begun with arrogance in a cabin had transformed into a global conversation about dignity and equality. Elijah and Olivia Carter were no longer just Michael Carter's children. They had become symbols, unwilling faces of a movement they never expected to lead. Karen Mitchell, once proud of her platinum card and entitled reputation, now found herself drowning in silence. Skyline Airways confirmed what the world had already guessed. Her elite membership had been permanently revoked. She released a carefully written apology, filled with excuses and polished words, but the public wasn't convinced. Respect lost so publicly could not be bought back with statements. She had become the cautionary tale she once thought others were. The airline itself faced its reckoning. The crew members who stood frozen during the confrontation were quietly suspended, then dismissed. Skyline Airways rolled out new training, this time not as a gesture but as a promise carved into policy. Posters filled airports, Every passenger, every seat, equal respect. The message was clear. Flight 287 had rewritten the rules. For Elijah and Olivia, life also shifted. At school, classmates whispered their names in admiration. Teachers asked them to speak about what dignity meant. Friends shared stories of their own moments of humiliation, finding courage to stand firm. The twins realized their experience had stretched beyond themselves. It had given others the bravery to say no more. One evening, weeks after the incident, Michael gathered his children in the family's living room. The fire crackled softly as he looked at them with pride. "Do you understand now," he asked gently, "why I let you fly alone that day?" Olivia nodded slowly. "You wanted us to learn what it feels like to face the world without protection." Elijah added, "And to see that we could still stand, even when someone tried to push us down." Michael's smile was faint but full of warmth. "Exactly. Power is not in the seats you hold or the money you spend. Power is in refusing to surrender your dignity. You proved that, even before I answered the phone." The twins glanced at each other, hearts swelling. For the first time, they felt the weight of adulthood pressing gently but firmly on their shoulders. That week, Michael was invited to speak at an international leadership summit. Elijah and Olivia accompanied him, sitting once more in the front row. The hall was vast, filled with leaders, innovators, teachers, and young people from across the world. Cameras streamed every word. Michael stepped to the podium, pausing to look at his children before addressing the audience. "Let me tell you about two teenagers," he began, "who boarded a flight expecting only a journey. They were told to move, to give up their seats for someone who believed arrogance outweighed fairness. But they did not move. They stood in silence, in dignity, in courage. And because of them, the world remembered a truth that should never forget. No one is too young, too small, too powerless to demand respect." Applause thundered. Elijah felt his chest burn with pride. Olivia's eyes shimmered with quiet tears. Michael raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "This is not just about my children. This is about your children. About every voice that trembles but still speaks. Every hand that shakes but still refuses to be pushed aside. Dignity is not a privilege. It is a birthright. And until we treat it as such, stories like theirs will continue. But let this be the last. Let respect fly higher than any plane." The hall erupted, applause echoing like waves. The Carter twins sat frozen, their hearts full, knowing they had witnessed not just their father's power, but his truth. Later that night, as the three of them walked out beneath the soft city lights, Elijah broke the silence. "Dad? Yes, son? Do you think people will forget?" Michael stopped, looking at both of them. "They will not forget if you keep living the lesson. Every day you carry yourself with dignity, you remind the world again. That is how change lasts." Olivia took her father's hand. Elijah walked tall at his side. They didn't feel like children anymore. They felt like torchbearers of something larger than themselves. High above, a plane crossed the night sky, lights blinking against the dark. Elijah looked up, smiling faintly. That flight had been a battlefield, a lesson, and a victory. And now, it was a story that belonged to the world.